This is the PickBits Daily Signal for Friday, July 24th, your signal in the day's tech noise. Here's the lineup. 1. In one recent 10-month stretch, the FAA approved more police drone waivers than in the previous 7 years combined, and not one of them needed a public vote. 2. The governor who announced Google's $40 billion Texas build-out now wants to strip those data centers of their tax breaks. 3. Your own $20 ChatGPT can export every conversation you have ever had, and your company's enterprise workspace cannot. And 4, on the brighter side, a childhood cancer can be too rare for any one hospital to study, so the government just pointed its supercomputers at all of them at once. Let's get into it. This is the PickBits Daily Signal. Story 1. More than 1,000 police agencies can now fly drones past the operator's line of sight. Not one city council voted on it. The approval is a federal waiver. No public comment step, no local hearing. A drone that answers a 911 call is useful, and almost nobody argues otherwise. The rule this lifted was the whole bottleneck. Line of sight meant one human standing outside per aircraft. Take that away, and one operator supervises several drones launched off rooftops, dispatched by the 911 call itself. The FAA issued more of these waivers between April of last year and February of this one than in the previous 7 years combined. Last week's Flock story got argued in public. This has no public step. Another city already pulled back on this.
But police drones are controversial. Seattle shut down their police drone program over opposition from residents, and civil liberties groups have privacy concerns.
Never before has police been able to send robotic surveillance cameras over people's houses.
The departments running these say the camera points at the horizon on the way to a call and only launches when somebody dials 911. I believe them about their own policy. They also wrote that policy about themselves. Not one of these programs needed a public vote to exist. A helicopter would have needed a budget vote, and this needed a form. So look yours up this week in EFF's Atlas of Surveillance. If your agency is there, 3 documents make it auditable: the waiver, the dispatch criteria that says which calls launch a drone, and the deletion schedule for footage that is not evidence. Push on that deletion schedule, because it decides whether a year of video of your street still exists. Follow this one. Story 2. If your job touches where AI compute gets built or financed, the binding constraint just changed under you. It used to be megawatts and chip supply. Now it is whether the state still wants the project there at all. Back on May 13th, it was one Texas county trying to stop a data center. It is not one county anymore. Greg Abbott announced Google's $40 billion Texas investment. This week, he ordered regulators to keep those data centers from raising Texans' power bills and said he would end their state tax breaks. That is the same governor, in the same year, on the same build-out. His opponent, Gina Hinojosa, calls it doublespeak. In Ohio, residents are gathering signatures to ban new data center construction statewide. And in Wisconsin, at a town hall over one of these projects this month, residents stood up and said they would not pay double on their utility bill, and they wanted answers now.
Town hall this month, we saw how the data center is dividing the community.
We need clarity, and we need it now, because we are not going to pay double the amount of our utility bills. Do you understand that?
The people making both arguments live in the same county, which is why this does not resolve in November. A Republican agriculture commissioner opposes these projects, and so do the Republican protest organizers outside Lubbock. An issue both parties dislike does not get settled by an election. My read is the utility bill wins this one, because a jobs pitch happens once and the bill arrives every month. So, if you cite, finance, or buy AI capacity, put 2 questions on this quarter's checklist in writing. How live is the tax abatement your model assumes, and where does your facility sit when water gets rationed? Send those to whoever owns siting before you commit. If it is your power bill instead, the room that decides it is your utility commission's cost allocation docket, not the zoning hearing. Story 3. Your company pays per seat for ChatGPT Business or Enterprise, and it cannot get its own conversations back out in bulk. The one moment you will have leverage to change that is the renewal. On a free, Plus, or Pro account, the export button pulls down everything you have ever typed. On Business and Enterprise, the tiers a company pays the most for, there is no export button. The customers paying the most have the least control. What admins get instead is the compliance platform. It keeps conversation logs for 30 days. A compliance log is a receipt, not a backup. The Register asked OpenAI why and got no justification. We do not know if this is a product gap or a retention choice, and it would be wrong to guess. A freelance journalist put a tool on GitHub that saves your threads offline and says it probably breaches the terms of service. Do not point that at a company account. If tempted, that is a question for your lawyers, not IT. The enterprise tier is the one rivals are chasing.
In a number of areas. And what you might see is companies picking off little parts of what OpenAI has done well. Can Anthropic go in and get the enterprise use? And can Anthropic go in and get coding? Can Gemini go in and get some of the
The switching cost protects a tier like that, and your data staying behind is that cost. Back in June, we called leaning on one AI vendor a supply risk. The tool can go dark on somebody else's decision. This is the other half. Not whether you can still use it, but whether you can take it with you. So answer one question in writing this week. Can we get our workspace data out, and in what format? Then put a portability clause on the renewal. Bulk export, a machine-readable format, a delivery deadline. Send that to whoever signs your software renewals because customer owns its data, has never once produced a file. Story 4. Somewhere, there is a kid with a cancer so rare that no single hospital ever sees enough cases of it to run a real study. The problem was never money, it was sample size. This week, the federal government started pooling those cases. On Wednesday, Energy Secretary Chris Wright named the first 278 projects selected under the Genesis mission, $293 million across 342 institutions. 168 of those awards went to universities, against 87 to the national labs. Federal AI money usually pools at the top. This one did not. Livermore has been running this play for a while now.
Discovery platform. LCAD simulates molecular interactions and finds the most promising compounds to fight disease. Using high-performance computing and AI, this process that used to take years can now be done in weeks.
Genesis mission takes that same kind of computing power and points it at a much bigger pool of data. NIH stood up a biogenesis mission the same week, more than $1.2 billion, and the concrete move is a data move. Health and Human Services is opening its pediatric cancer data ecosystem and its National Cancer Center network, so those supercomputers can train across hundreds of rare subtypes at once. Selected for award negotiations, is not funded and running. And the White House Science Blueprint the same week drew a mixed reaction for weighting AI over the life sciences, which makes next year's appropriations the real test. But if you are in a university lab, chase the platform access, not just the grant money because compute at that scale was never something you could buy. Watch whether those university awards get real frontier compute or a queue position, because that decides whether any of this reaches a patient. That is the day. A record number of university labs just got their hands on a supercomputer pointed at the cancers nobody else would fund. I'll take that. That's the signal. I'll see you tomorrow.